Hey, good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where we try to give you the perspective of two grizzled police veterans. Grizzled as we patrol the rough and tumble streets of Los Angeles in a virtual police car. Actually, the streets of the nation, because we don't just confine our focus to Southern California, even let alone Los Angeles, and we know that people watch from all over the place. So we try to give you that perspective. I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
And that's Gil Contreras, yes. And I've got a 25-year law enforcement career doing a whole bunch of stuff that I thought was pretty cool. I was fortunate in that I managed to avoid the stuff I didn't think was cool, although sometimes you got to do it, like working graveyards. And that's me. So you'll get my perspective as a former police supervisor, as a SWAT guy, as a dope cop, as an admin weenie, the whole thing. So I ran the gamut. I didn't work motors. I didn't fly in a helicopter, and I never worked internal affairs. Other than that, I pretty much did everything. Gil?
Well, I worked, came up through the ranks, uniform patrol, narcotics, gang. I was the chief's adjutant for a bit.
See, another admin weenie.
Yeah. I help write policy, our pursuit policy, our use of force policy. So
nice.
A lot of the stuff that we talk about is not new stuff. It's stuff that I've worked on and worked within for a number of years. And in addition to the police side, I also have a number of years working with a former partner of mine doing criminal defense investigations. And so I've seen both sides of the criminal case building, if you will. And so I know what it takes on the law enforcement side to build a criminal case, and then I know on the defense side what it is they're actually looking for. And it was interesting to me because, a detective starts his investigation at, what happened.
Right.
This person is dead and they shouldn't be. Now let me go backwards and try to figure out why.
Right. Who, what, when, where, why,
right.
How.
And defense investigators start at, what will a jury believe? The facts don't matter, but what will a jury believe? And
right.
That's the difference. And I'm also an award-winning journalist. And
Con la voz de oro. He's got a golden mic and a golden voice.
So. That's right. I did win a golden mic.
That's right.
I did public radio.
So we like to think that between the two of us, we have enough credibility to bring a little gravitas to our opinions here that we didn't just whip them out of thin air. I started to say something else.
Right.
We didn't just pull them out of someplace. But
they're not uninformed.
Right. And so we try to know what we're talking about. But, hey, if you disagree, or if you do agree, you can always give us a jingle, 323-293-3375. Or you can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio Show. Is it Ride Along Radio Show or Ride Along Radio? You'll find it.
I don't know, but for me it's at XCOP1035.
There you go. So you can hit Gil up. And, of course, you can send us an email at ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. But the big thing is call in live, 323-293-3375. And you will see to my left, we have a ride-along with us tonight. A longtime ally of mine, social media ally, that I've just got to meet in real life tonight for the first time. But Gil has known her for a long time. And so coming to the stage, we have Trish Nabarat-Nassingham. Did I say it right?
You said it perfectly.
Wow. Boom.
Perfectly.
Boom. And I just started saying it for the first time about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll keep saying it right. So, Trish, give us a little bit about your background and what we can expect to hear from you tonight.
So, well, the way I characterize myself, I'm really just a concerned citizen.
That's who comes on ride-alongs, by the way, a lot, is concerned citizens.
Right. I am Gil's sister.
Boom.
Yeah.
Here we go. Family Feud, man. I feel like Steve Harvey in the middle, the Family Feud.
Yeah. So, I have a bachelor's degree in English literature, and I am currently in a master's program at USC. It's a Master of Art in Teaching, so when I finish, I'll have an MA as well as a single subject teacher credential.
Nice.
In English, so I'll be able to teach English. We are trained to work in high needs schools, so that's what our focus of our program is. How do we effectively teach students in high needs schools, and it's actually in some ways easier than we think.
Now, when you say high needs, was there another term for that at another time, or is that like a new term for something that's been around? Or is that
are you talking about urban schools, or what are you talking about?
So high needs schools are schools that have where the number of teachers are considered to be underqualified. So they may not have a master's degree. They might only just have their teaching credential.
Right.
Also, the number of students who are on the free lunch program would qualify the school as a high need school.
Low
Okay, so it'd be like disadvantage is what we would have said before.
Or what we used to call at-risk youth.
At risk, social disadvantage. High need. That's the new, wow, man.
Yeah, she's being she's currently being indoctrinated at USC.
That was educated. He meant educated.
Oh, that's my bad, yeah.
Yeah, indoctrinated. That's funny. So, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but how this came about is that, those of you who know Gil and have heard Gil's perspectives know that Gil and I do sometimes go back and forth. And my ally in that on social media has been Trish. And so I think Gil, did you kind of like challenge her to come onto the show and say what you had to say?
Well,
invite her to come onto the show? Or?
I didn't challenge her. My followers on my social media challenged me to bring her on.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. And I was so happy.
Come be the light, and so I'm bringing the light.
She's bringing the light, and I was so happy when I saw that. When Gil goes, "Hey man, what do you think about my sister coming on the show?" Oh, I said, "Which one?" Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not Terry right now. No, shout out to Terry. I said, Trish, outstanding. Come on. And we'll bring Terry on next time.
But the reason, one of the reasons I did want Trish to do this is because she's very outspoken, she's very articulate, and she's really smart.
Oh yeah,
but
I can tell.
But she's also very off. And while she has
wow,
yeah, and just if you just listen to that opening about these high need schools and about how you teach these students, they have this theory about it. And
that's what they call it now. That's what they call it.
And I can't.
Is that the new term? You didn't make that up, did you?
No.
But I'm not talking about the term high needs. I'm talking about the student population that she thinks she's going to be teaching. Uh-huh. And I cannot wait for the moment for her to actually get in a classroom somewhere in a quote high needs close quote area.
Right.
I can't wait because all of the theory that they're pushing into her brain and Ta-Nehisi Coates and Michelle Alexander's new Jim Crow and all this nonsense about this racist criminal justice system and blah 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 and slavery and how it all affects the crime thing. And they're now and then all the way down.
You don't see a correlation
all the way down to and they can't learn. So they have.
So you think that's a liberal bigotry kind of a thing?
Absolutely,
it's a soft bigotry of low expectations.
So
is what they call that.
I can't wait until she gets out of the Simi Valley Stevenson Ranch bubble, and
it's kind of putting all your business out
and into a real school.
So now, and that's a criticism that's often been leveled. But let me say this: to prepare yourself, so you need to go rent Lean on Me, Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer. Go watch some White Shadow reruns. Welcome Back, Kotter.
I don't know about that one.
Etc. But no, seriously though, like you often hear this, and people talk about that with when they accuse the Democratic Party or liberals of being racist. They like to throw out the term the soft bigotry of low expectations, saying that people say you have a lesser expectation of these people because so really the foundation of that belief is racism itself. It says that, like you said, they can't learn.
So that idea, though, that he's talking about they can't learn or they don't want to learn, or somehow if we were to employ a strategy, a teaching theory, a learning theory, educational learning theory, if we employ that into our classroom, somehow we are sort of dumbing down our curriculum. And actually, that's not true. The literature shows that more than you would want to even imagine, but there are teachers who have what you're talking about is it's called a deficit mindset. And that is a ideology. One of the things that we are asked to do, my program just started, so I just finished my first term, but one of the things we are required to do is to engage in reflective, teachers engage in this reflective cycle advanced by Carol Rogers. And it really asks us to take the focus, for teachers to take the focus off of their teaching and onto their student learning. And the way in which you do that is to sort of pull yourself back and objectively look and see what your students are doing. And so before we start looking at a classroom and we see students with their pens down and writing, before we say that they are engaged in learning, the reflective cycle asks that the teachers sort of create an assessment of whether or not that's actually even happening. And so the teacher is then encouraged to ask for student feedback.
Well, let me ask you this, though. So when we talk about high-need schools, right, and so here was the dichotomy of my upbringing in the L.A. Unified School District. So I was educated on the west side of Los Angeles, right? I went to junior high school in Hancock Park. I went to high school in West Hollywood, et cetera. But I was involved in a program that was citywide, and so then that would sometimes put me completely on the other side of town. Okay, so I might be on Fairfax one day, and the next day I'm literally over on Central. Okay, and interacting with kids from those schools at those schools, and so I kind of saw, it was amazing to me that this was the same school district. You know, if you look at the difference between John Burroughs back then junior high school in Hancock Park and George Washington Carver in South Central, off Central and Vernon by the KFC over there, we used to stop at. It was a huge difference, and to think these are both junior high schools in the same school district, right? So for me, that was a kind of an eye opener, because most students don't get both of those experiences, and most teachers probably don't even get most of those experiences. So I saw that there was I'm going to call it was an imbalance, okay, in the way that the school was even set up. And so for me, it's kind of bothersome when people approach it as there's a way you teach over on this side of town, and there's a way you teach and run a school on that side of town. And maybe that's driven or born of necessity, but we do the same thing in law enforcement. We police a certain way depending on where we are. So maybe that's just a human nature thing.
Well, but in policing, it's as a result of it's crime data. You know, it's
right. There's stats.
It's not just population. You know,
it's stats you can pull from, and it may be the same thing. And maybe we go off arrest stats. You guys might go off test scores. You know, I mean, I don't know.
And there's a push to get away from that, right?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that we're being asked to do is just to consider there's other ways of running a classroom so that you can pull out the best in your students. You know, there's also this idea that students come to the classroom with what are called funds of knowledge. So these are skill sets that they've learned at home, in their home home environment, their family environment, and that actually these are skill sets that the teachers can access to help make this an inclusive experience for them.
I can see that
one
because
of our
people learn
professors
differently
had said
based
that,
on their background, certainly.
But one of my professors had said that you'll never hear students might say they hate school as an institution, they dislike school, but you won't hear children say I hate learning.
Right, that's a good point.
So I think it's not that we're being taught to teach one way in one kind of school and then another way in another. What I'm learning is something that I can take to, Harvard Westlake. I can take to, a school in Sylmar or San Fernando.
So it's a portable model. It's transferable. It's not just
absolutely because
over here. This works like this over here only.
Right, because if you apply learning theory, most teachers get away from that. We've been told by our professors that, there's all kinds of excuses for why they don't want to what is called differentiate their lesson plan. It's time consuming, but, I didn't enter this field of education at my age at this time for want of anything better to do. I used to think that if you were going to be a teacher, that it was something that you were like a skill that you were born with, but actually, what I'm learning is that it's actually a skill that you can acquire, and effective teaching is available to everybody, to all educators.
Well, sure, and that's why we do instructor development, et cetera, et cetera. And we even do that with we're both firearms instructors, so we even do that with our line of work in terms of instructor development and principles learning, et cetera.
My only point in even bringing any of that up was just to say that I love the theory. However, when you get to Locke High School, you'll see.
You know what?
But you're talking about students who've been through a system that have. So by the time because I am going to teach high school, so by the time students come to me, they've been berated, they've been beat down inside this education system. And remember, when you have a student, you can have, even at a high functioning school, you can have students having different experiences within that school, just taking different teachers. Right. So by the time they come to me, and if they've had 10 years of being, racial, what are called microaggressions, slights, insults. Did an observation where the teacher was openly hostile towards her students. I mean, it's so sad. It's really sad.
That teacher may need to go someplace else or find another profession.
That's one of the things about the education field, and it's one of the arguments about public education, is that because of the unions, you can't get rid of those people, those teachers. They have tenure. They're stuck there.
They say the same thing about law enforcement, right?
That's why this whole push for vouchers and school choice, has always been, what I wanted to do with my kids when they were in school.
Like a charter school kind of thing?
Either charter school or parochial school. The Catholic school system does a way better job than the public school system with half the money. But they get better results. And I'll tell you, the thing that I noticed when my daughter was in Catholic school, the thing that I noticed is, because she came from a charter to Catholic, and then she went to charter for high school, and so for middle school. But the thing that I noticed when she went to Catholic school was that in that school, being on the honor roll was cool.
Yeah.
Getting good grades was cool.
Right.
When she was at the charter middle school in the Valley, there was 2,000 students there. She was just one of 2,000. And so at her school, being the smart one wasn't cool. Being on the honor roll wasn't cool.
And you know what? In American culture, we typically, if you look at who's the homecoming king, it's typically the football quarterback or somebody, or basketball stud is not the kid with the highest GPA. It's not the kid who's taken, calculus 3 in the 12th grade. So that's just not what we do in our American culture.
I'm just saying that the Catholic schools are more demanding of the students. And they don't worry so much about how they feel or, quote, microaggressions, close quote. And they worry more about results that produce.
I do want to talk to you about the school to prison pipeline, but we have a call, so we're going to take that. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
This is Ishmael from Dallas, Texas.
Hey, Ishmael, how you doing, man? Thanks for calling.
How's everything?
All right.
Hey, I have a question for the educator. Do you feel it's important for the children to see themselves in the lessons that they're teaching? Because most time we're in school, science, math always goes back to a Eurocentric beginning, even though it went further than that. And I think a lot of times kids feel alienated because they don't see themselves in what they're learning. And I just wonder, were you guys talking about that at all in your college courses?
We are actually in it's called cultural relevant theory and also cultural sustaining theory. These are ways in which a teacher can acknowledge and include a student's their culture, their experiences, and make those connections between them and the lesson. Absolutely. And you hit it right on. And I think that this idea that kind of education is only that's something that you're only going to find in a private school, I would disagree with that. And I think parents should really lead the way here in terms of what they want for their children in
certainly.
The public school system. Your question is so astute. Really and truly, your question for the student sees themselves in the curriculum. Actually, that is in the literature that I've read. It's so vitally important. And that's actually what I'm hoping to do. It's what we're being taught to do at USC. And that's the one way in which you can get better results out of your students. Grades are arbitrary. As an educator, I can set up my classroom so that there's a small group of people getting A's, a small group of people getting fails, and everyone's doing mediocre. I can set it up that way if I wanted to, or I can set it up in a way where everyone is succeeding, students are constructing knowledge, and what you just said, the student being able to see themselves in the curriculum is so vitally important. And if you have that understanding, if that is even like at the forefront of your mind, I'm hoping that you'll take that to your public school, and if you have children, because that's exactly what we need to be doing. That's what we're being taught. Absolutely.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for calling, man. Hey, and appreciate your continued support.
Of course, thanks.
All right.
Love the show.
That is a great question. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, he's a real engaged guy. He sends a lot of good tweets and makes a lot of good suggestions.
Oh my God,
he's spot on. Okay, so listen, and we're going to move on. But school to prison pipeline, we touched on it with David Cruz.
Yeah, right.
What, about 2 months ago, probably, right? And I really hope that we can rope you back in here when we get him back in here on that, because that was something that, man, he laid it out pretty well. And I'd like to hear your take on it when we focus on that. 'Cause we said we were going to circle back around to it, right? So we'll get David back in here. All right. So our last show, we had Tony Boiselle, who is a police lieutenant who also runs an organization called SoBear. And SoBear is dedicated to supporting the recovery of addicts and people who have substance abuse issues, and that was through the use of their bears. And it's funny because I've known him for a while. I knew about his organization for a while, but I didn't realize the ways in which he was trying to do outreach and stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool, with the little bear where you can put your chips in the sobriety chips in the back and everything. And that actually becomes important to people. I could see how it would really become important to people. So that was pretty neat. And we didn't get any social media pushback on that, because how could you really? Yeah. It's such a positive thing, you know what I mean? And just an unusual thing, because as police officers, we look at substance abusers in one way, and we don't, unless it's alcohol. As police officers, we tend to understand that a little better than anything else, but alcohol is legal if you're over 21, so we don't frown upon it like we do other sorts of substance abuses. But he actually stepped outside of that and just kind of took a humanistic approach, I think, to it. And there's something to be said for that, because I was not that empathetic when I was still on the job. Yeah. So, but he is, and he's a good dude.
Yeah. And having been in that field also, I'm still not that sympathetic. I found a lot of people who just didn't want to change were either somewhere because court had ordered them to be.
Right. We talked about it. Drug court, right?
Yeah. And domestic violence. We used to do DV also. So. In my experience as law enforcement, criminal defense, social service, and then into canines now, that in that stretch of experiences and training, I've mostly found that people do what they want to do. So if they find the motivation to do something, to get better, to get better grades, they do it.
But it has to come from within, clearly.
And if they can't find it within themselves, it doesn't matter what theory you have. They're going to do what they're going to do, and that's going to be that.
Well, but even some people who do really want to kick it, I would imagine it's pretty damn tough. So if you don't want to beat your addiction, really, I remember somebody telling me once, man, I like getting high. Mm-hmm. And, at least he was honest. Right. That's not the socially acceptable or expected answer, but he was honest.
Right. My experience was it took nearly a life-threatening experience for someone to break out of the trance that they're in and say, whoa, I got to do something different with my life, because I almost, then they realize in that moment of clarity, and they call it in program moments of clarity, in that moment of clarity, they realize I'm really hurting the people close to me. And when I used to do domestic violence, you had to make them say they were batterers, and you had and you had to make them talk about what they did to their spouse or whatever, and they were always reluctant to. But
that's a hell of a jacket.
But so I started using their children, and so I would tell them things like, every time you act out, every time you get crazy, your kid's watching you. He's watching you, and here's the impact it's having on him. Is that what you want? You may not like her anymore, but do you not like him too? Right. Because if you don't, then okay, keep doing what you're doing. Sure. Do her, do him at the same time, and you're setting him up to be you. Yeah, that's cool. Sure. However, if you care anything about that kid, you have to change how you're doing this. Yeah. And then you just see, the eyes open, and once you have that, once I had that moment, then I could say, okay, so how do I do that? Well, here's some ways, and then we could spend the rest.
And then they're open to hearing it. Correct. And just spinning your wheels. Right. Well, that's good. All right. And so so after that, we moved on and talked about the acquittal / mistrial / dropping of all charges against the 6 Baltimore PD officers in the Freddie Gray case. And we got some social media feedback on that topic, but it was all before the show even went on the air. So it wasn't even about anything we said. It was just about the topic, right? And so you can go to our Facebook page, Right Along Radio Show, to see that. We posted that the night before to generate interest, and it just did generate a lot of interest. But again, it was all before airtime.
So we had predicted that.
Oh yeah, we called that back in September when they first arraigned him.
So I just noticed that our guest over there, just was breathing heavy and rolling her eyes.
She had asthma. She got asthma.
I don't know, but Trish, something about the Freddie Gray case that you want to say?
Well, I mean, a guy gets arrested, is taken into custody, and then dies before he gets arraigned, before his day in court, and coroner rules it a homicide. You know, all these people had their hand in it. Those 6 officers had something to do with the time that he was picked up to the time that he was taken to the hospital, and that there's no and then now it's just done, and now he's just dead.
Well, and that's what I said.
And then people just have to swallow that. His family just has to swallow that.
But that's because the prosecutor overreached, though, Trish, and that was my whole thing.
Well, that's not what she says exactly. She says that actually the union was acting in collusion. They were, obstructing her investigation. And, there's nothing stronger. You complained about the teachers' unions, but the police unions are equally as big. And
I won't say that they weren't, because I don't know, and I know East Coast policing is a little different than you do out here.
It's very different.
Okay, and those unions are a little different out there. Okay, so I don't know about that, but I know that when you cast your net so wide, now let's talk about that. Homicide. Homicide can be anything from you get a rifle and get on the roof of a building and wait for somebody to come out. You lay in wait and you kill them, which is first-degree murder, which is a capital offense, to you're involved in a vehicle accident and you kill someone accidentally, and it's negligent homicide. It's manslaughter. Right. Homicide's a wide range, man. Homicide is.
Yeah, but there's nothing.
Okay,
so
but here's the thing, though. But
there's no negligence.
No, because she went for the Hail Mary pass and charged people with depraved heart murder, which is a much higher standard to meet, as opposed to maybe whatever the Maryland equivalent is of manslaughter.
Correct.
Had they gone for manslaughter, I think you might have seen that. But when you're talking about depraved heart murder, you raise the bar so high that if you win, then, hey, it's a big deal, and maybe you'll be state attorney general, and maybe one day you'll be attorney general of the United States. But
or maybe you'll just get 6 officers arrested.
Yeah,
I mean, they do jail time for having
all 6 of them.
killed
now,
somebody.
See, here was the thing, though, and this was the gambit. The gambit was, I'm going to get all 6 of them, and those 6 all know which 1 or 2 did it. So I'm going to get all 6 of them. I'm going to put their careers and their livelihoods on the line. I'm going to put their pictures in the paper, their mugshots, and they're going to talk. But nobody did. And that may be because they don't know.
Right, that's right.
Sergeant Alicia White, she shows up after the fact. She's got to sit there now?
Yeah.
She's got to be.
She didn't do anything.
You know what I mean? Really? So it was a stretch. It was an overreach. And I'm not saying clearly somebody contributed to the death of Freddie Gray. He didn't kill himself, I do not believe. I don't think it was a freak of nature where the bones in his neck just snapped. Something happened that shouldn't have happened, and this is a result. But now nobody's gonna pay even a little bit for it.
That's right, because the Constitution says you have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, yeah.
And you can't. We don't know why Freddie Gray's neck was broken, but it's unreasonable. No reasonable person would say, okay, maybe it happened in the tough ride in the back of that van. Then you go, okay, well, even if he was in the van, even if he was unsecured, the condition he was in when they brought him I watched the video, his feet were dragging. He couldn't even walk, for God's sakes.
Right.
So he was thrown into the back of the van and left there. And so when they put the handcuffs on him, apparently there was no fight. I guess there was an initial fight.
Right, before the video got turned on and we saw the end of it.
Correct. So, if I'm investigating, I'm going to put my investigator hat on now.
Right.
I'm going to say, okay, that homicide that Mosby is talking about did not occur in the van. It occurred at the first confrontation. Somebody put their foot on the back of his neck and caused it to dislodge. That's what happened. He took off running. That exacerbated his condition. He hits the ground. That's it for him. He was on his way out the door.
So now let's talk about that. Now let's say it didn't happen there, and it did happen in the back of the van. My point. Here's where I'm going with that. It happened here, or here, or here, and there's nobody that was in all 3 places.
That's right.
So you got no business rolling 6 people into it when none of them were at each place. Either you get the people who were here,
correct.
You get the people who were here, or you get the people who were here.
That's right.
You don't cast the net wide because it didn't happen everywhere.
That's right. And any reasonable person who's looked at this will go, it did not happen in the van. It happened at the arrest. That's where
You and I talked about that a while ago. It seemed that's
it happens in the fights,
yeah.
and when you take somebody down to the ground, you put your knee in their back, and you're trained not to put it on their neck. But in a fight, and if you're fighting, people think it's so easy to take people into custody.
Not a grown man when you don't want to go.
And he didn't have to be fighting. All he has to be doing is this. If this is, it takes forever to get those two arms.
For those
out.
of you listening on the podcast, Gil has clenched his arms across his chest in a rigid manner and clenched both fists. For those of you who are not watching, who are listening to the podcast.
Wow, that sounded
Okay.
that sounded a little erotic.
Wow.
I didn't quite get that, but
I said rigid. I didn't say erect. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Anyway,
wow.
My point is
TMI.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like I heard they have porno movies for the blind now where they describe that kind of thing. I heard that.
God.
I'm moving on. I'm done with Freddie Gray. It didn't happen.
All right.
It didn't happen in the van. That's why I didn't get it. That's why nothing happened.
Okay,
So if you want to be angry with anybody, be angry with Marilyn Mosby.
Then I blame her for dropping the ball in her clumsy pursuit of justice.
That's right.
That's how I look at it.
Yep. She made a decision on how to pursue the case, and it was wrong.
And now nobody's ever going to pay for it.
That's right. Now he's just dead.
Right, now he's just dead and there's no justice. Yeah, and that's a tragedy there.
Look,
Well,
not-
at
not
any
o-
listen, at
not only
any
is he
time,
dead, he's
at
DED
any
dead.
time, at any time, anyone with any integrity in wearing that blue uniform that you hold up as the Holy Grail, at any time, if
Not quite holy.
Yeah, exactly.
Not quite holy.
anyone can step forward and say, "I know what happened."
Yeah, but now what? Now look. Now why would you? Now
Why wouldn't you?
Well, I'm
No,
gonna tell you
wait,
why. Let me tell you why. Because now, if you're looking at it, and we're going to go to break, but now if you're looking at it, you see that 6 people, some of whom had nothing to do with it,
Right.
got dragged over the coals. You don't want to get dragged up in that.
and don't even
or 6 people, if you think they were all guilty, all of them walked. So what's the point of you going through all that for?
So
and
they're
I
going to get
understand
their
what you're
jobs
saying.
reinstated.
Probably.
And back pay.
And back pay, yeah,
That's right.
probably. Well, you know what?
And this is another reason why your law enforcement is rapidly losing favor in the city, in the communities.
Ooh, I'm so glad she's on that side of the table.
All right.
Look,
Well, here's the
this
thing.
is what
Let's listen. I don't disagree with that. I've been saying that.
This is
and
what it's
when we
like.
come back, I'll introduce you to the societal pendulum.
This
But
is what
look-
it's like at Thanksgiving dinner. Right.
Really?
This is it right here.
Okay, good. So you keep you guys separated. I have to be Tio Jorge today. I'm Tio George. All right. Hey, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we'll jump right back into this, and we'll talk about some news of the day and stuff.
We're going to get into it.
Now you got me wanna break you off some. Yeah. Now you got me wanna break you off some. Yeah. Now you got me wanna break you off some.
All right.
Yeah.
And we are back, and we had that little invigorating musical interlude in honor of
a bad
Gil.
track.
Gil's favorite saying.
For sure.
His tagline.
For sure.
It's his Flavor Flav's "Yeah, boy."
You don't hear me, though.
There you
You
go.
don't hear me, though.
So listen, we're going to jump into news of the week, and we try to find stories that are that people are talking about, that are trending, to use a social media term, that have a little bit of something we can some meat we can get into. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, because except for Officer Tommy Norman, we usually are showing officers who are either have shot somebody or being accused of doing something heinous or whatever. So this first one here is actually shows the other side of police work, and it shows true professionalism in law enforcement, how you're supposed to serve the public no matter what or who they are. And this is a Fort Worth, Texas police officer responding to a robbery. They chase a suspect down. He gets into an accident. 2 of his co-suspects flee on foot, and this robbery suspect is now trapped in the car, in this burning car. And the officers go up and free him from the vehicle. Of course, they take him into custody afterwards, but it's actually pretty cool to watch this in action. And here's the footage.
Hey, give me your hand.
Police officers in Fort Worth, Texas, frantically work to free a man from a burning car. But it's not just any man. He's an armed robbery suspect who crashed while allegedly trying to escape. There were 3 men in the car when the accident occurred. 2 of them fled, but the third was trapped in the vehicle.
No, but the car's on fire, man.
One officer reportedly came to the driver's side of the burning car to help free the man's legs. Fort Worth Police Sergeant Mark Pavero says it's just part of the job.
We recruit people that can think on the fly, that can think quickly, that can perform under pressure.
The crash happened a couple of weeks ago, but police are only now releasing the body cam video.
In light of what happened a couple of weeks ago in Dallas and Baton Rouge, people are taking notice.
Police say the suspect is now okay, although he is facing armed robbery charges.
An example of officers doing their job, doing a couple of different facets of the job at one time, right? Doing the life-saving portion and then doing the crime-fighting portion. Usually you do one or the other.
There's crime-fighting, life-saving, crime-fighting.
Right, exactly, right? Yeah, they did both, right? They had a little interlude in there. But, you know, that shows you that those officers were willing to risk themselves, because it's real easy to step back and go, hey,
yeah,
that car's on fire. Call the fire department. Yeah, roll the fire department or whatever, you know.
Step back and direct traffic.
And you're not supposed to make any difference between you do that, whether that guy was running from you and he wrecked his car and now he's trapped into a burning car or trapped inside a burning car, or if it's a soccer mom on her way home and she gets hit by the robber and she's trapped inside a burning car. These are both human beings, and you're still charged with protecting human life. So that's an example of officers.
Right. Why would you deny him his due process?
Exactly.
Well, it has nothing about denying him his due
process.
Well,
yeah, it is.
Well, let him burn in the car.
If you feel he should be punished. But here's the thing, though. Mm-hmm. That is still, it's still one of those things where people may not expect that, as you just said about the people's view of law enforcement being dim. These are still the same people. And I saw somebody with this hashtag abolish the police. Mm-hmm. And, you know.
It's the new America. That's right.
Here's my thing.
That's right.
Say what you want, abolish the police, et cetera, but this same guy, had he just robbed your store, and I guarantee the people whose store he did rob, they didn't call the tow truck driver. They didn't call down to the emergency room and ask to talk to the charge nurse. They didn't call the post office. They called the police, okay? So when we talk about abolish the police.
They didn't call the teacher.
They didn't.
They didn't call the teacher, I'll tell you that.
No, they didn't call the teacher. They even called the boy's dean.
Yeah,
they didn't call him.
Hey, do you have a theory about this?
So all right. Shots fired. Suspect down. All right. So, hey, clap back at any time. He's here. Clap back. I'm sure America's cheering you on to come back at him hard, you know. So that's the problem. You got family. You know, you got to know how far to go. You know, you can't be bringing up painful memories from childhood and stuff, all right?
We go all the way.
Well, you got cut to the bone?
Wait, look. Let me
cut to the bone.
He fights dirty.
Cut to the bone.
Our dad was 82nd Airborne Ranger.
All right. Rangers lead the way.
That's right. And the 82nd, their motto is all the way.
That's right, huh?
That's how we do it. Rangers lead the way, all the way.
All right. So, well, don't go all the way deep here.
Airborne.
So what I'm saying is that people say this abolish the police nonsense, but as soon as the shots ring out, as soon as there's another North Hollywood beef, as soon as terrorists roll up into the mall or the school where you're at, you're going to call for two people. You're going to call for the Lord, and you're going to call for the police. And it's going to sound like, oh, God, call the police. And that's how that's going to come out. So
but
they can say all that abolish the police nonsense that they want.
Right,
they're call.
But it's not the case that people who are calling for police reform are trying to abolish the police.
That's a hashtag. I didn't make that up. Look it up. Look it up. You got Twitter?
There are all kinds of hashtags.
Pull up hashtag abolish the police.
Okay, so that's just...
What does abolish mean?
It's a hashtag. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Clap back.
No, I'm asking you.
What is
I'm asking you, English teacher, for the definition. What's abolish mean?
To get rid of.
Bam.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So they're not saying... nicing up the police or discipline the police.
You're talking about a very small percentage of people.
And that's what I'm talking
to. There are reasonable people,
You're right.
law-abiding citizens
that's what I'm talking about.
Who think that
you just
based on current problems with policing in the United States.
But you just said it. You said, I'm talking about a very small percentage. And I am.
Right.
I am. I acknowledge that. I don't think the average person thinks that. But there are people who do think that. No. There are people who say they think that.
That's right.
They say they think that, but when something happens, they're waiting for the police to show up and save the day.
Not only do they think that, if you look at, because on my social media page, I listed the Black Lives Matter. They now have a platform.
Right. Well, finally, I'm glad to see them getting organized, and I'm hoping we see some housekeeping happen.
Yeah, and the platform calls for the defunding of police departments, demilitarization of law enforcement. They want an end to public jails, detention centers, youth facilities, and prisons as we know them.
Okay, so here's my thing.
Unbelievable.
How anyone after North Hollywood, which is when it started, after San Bernardino, and after Dallas,
Orlando,
are you calling for the demilitarization of police? I'm telling you that as a former SWAT officer who was responsible for driving and riding in an armored car with a machine gun and a helmet and a flak vest, and was trained to go into a situation that you don't want to be anywhere near when it happens, we need that equipment, okay? Especially with the threat we're facing now.
That's right.
You got to have that equipment. Now, I'm not saying
but
that
they don't believe
we should have that equipment out every day. Well, if people say that, they're not watching the news.
They don't believe
Police officers need automatic weapons and Kevlar helmets and flak vests and armored vehicles.
So
we need that. They think air conditioners are a bigger threat than terrorism, for God's sake.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw somebody say that. Go ahead, Trish.
Okay, Trish.
So I think you're just, which is per usual with Gil, but he sort of oversimplifies and
that makes for a good laugh, though.
Quite dismissive of a broader picture because he suffers from myopia. So the thing is, though, we can.
That was a medical term, I think.
No.
I think I'm going to ask Doc Snyder about that.
But you just check OED; it'll tell you. So no, I think that we can have police reform. I think that
wait.
That's Oxford's English dictionary for this is an English major here, so she's going to throw all that stuff out there.
What the hell is quote police reform close quote? What is that?
So an examination of policies that are affected. You remember your law enforcement agent, and I'm not an expert. I'm just like a concerned citizen.
Right, and that's why we want you here. Sure.
Right. So I just feel like a police department serves a community. So it is part of a community. It's not something
exactly. I said that last week. Even the gargoyles are part of the church. Remember that?
I do remember that.
Right.
Right. So just like schools are part of the community, and the schools also are. We're looking at them doing outreach to the community so that they become one. So that it is a like a more fluid sort of. It's a cohesive kind of community instead of having this faction, this entity in this community, acting in an adversarial manner.
Like an occupying force kind of a thing?
Right, exactly.
Okay, now I could see that, and I've seen that whole thing at play, but that maybe is an argument for how police officers are recruited, how they're assigned, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I also think that police officers should have a minimum four-year
I knew you were going to say that. Now let's talk
education.
about that.
I've said it on the Marshall Project in my comments because I think that you can get a better quality candidate.
All right. Now I have seen some damn fine police officers with the GEDs who were brave and forthright and wrote damn good paper and were honest, and people had great integrity and they were good cops. And I've seen people with master's degree be the most lackluster, worthless, cowardly-ass police officers that you would imagine, like real Don.
But are you talking
shit.
about police auto patrol? Because you seem to have that. There seems to be like a division within the ranks. So like you have your patrol officers, and then as they sort of promote up, they are accused of being less and less in tune with what's happening in the trenches.
I'm talking about when they were street cops. These same people. And there's been and the reverse is true too. I've seen people with GEDs who weren't worth the damn as police officers. Right. I've seen people with degrees who were stellar. And so I don't know that the job requires that. And I worry that we would narrow our candidate pool down when we already have a lot of hurdles in place, and you would miss out on people who really had a lot to offer, and you'd be forced to take people who didn't have as much to offer because they had this one requirement.
It's hard to even find a candidate that doesn't smoke weed, for God's sakes.
Well, I think that's going to be one of the requirements they remove. So over time, and let's talk about police selection like for 30 seconds. Over time, they've had to adjust police selection to reflect the candidate pool or the standards of the candidate pool, okay? It used to be that if you had ever lived with a boyfriend or girlfriend, you weren't going to get hired as a police officer. That was called a cohabitation. It used to be that if you were a police officer and it was discovered you were living with a boyfriend or girlfriend, you were going to get fired. Okay.
They expected you not to be in a relationship? They
expected you not to cohabitate without being married.
Boom.
Then they expect you to be a monk. But if you're going to cohabitate, and now though, that clearly is off the board. Then it was if you had a child out of wedlock.
That's an invasion of privacy.
Well, but see, there's back in the same days where if you weren't watering your lawn, you could get a suspension because your neighbor could call and snitch you out, and they get you for conduct unbecoming. Okay, so those days are gone. It used to be that if you had ever smoked marijuana, you were gone, unless it was and then it was, okay, it could have been, you could have smoked marijuana as long as it wasn't habitual and it was a long time ago.
Right.
Now,
But
as long as you don't show up to the test high, you're all right.
But if it was cocaine,
it was done.
That was
any cocaine, heroin, any felony, then you were done. Now, I think cocaine's got a
2 years,
2-year shelf life on
right.
it, and marijuana's got a 6-month shelf life.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. As long as you haven't done that in that period of time, then you're okay.
Because we have a whole bunch of millennials and Gen Xers that just like to smoke weed.
And so that's something, and it's being decriminalized. So whatever now, it's being decriminalized. But okay.
Well, except it's a Schedule 1 narcotic from the feds.
Well, once they do that, right. But until then, you're right. So I say that to say that there's all these other things that are in play, because now you're asking for people to have all these other things going on, and you get a degree, but here's how that's unfair. So I show up and I got a degree from Cal State Sacramento, okay? And they say C's get degrees, right? And so I show up and I got a 2.0 grade point average.
Boom.
But are they going to look at my grades now, right? And now bring that into play as to whether or not I'm going to be a good police officer? Because I know when I showed up at 23 years old, they went and pulled my high school grades, as if that had anything to do with what I was able to do as a 23-year-old.
Right.
Especially by that time I was already out of the academy.
I think
I excelled in the academy. What are you looking at my high school grades for?
Yeah. But they were looking at behavior. They were looking for problems, behavioral problems while you were in high school. That it wasn't so much the grades, but it was.
By the way, Gil's a fan of 1950s Joe McCarthy era, so that's
real invasive. Yeah. You're McCarthyism.
Would that have to do?
I think we need to put all of your comments in the proper context.
No, because she said earlier it's about invasion of privacy. But listen, all right, so we're going to go down that rabbit hole. But listen, let's cut to our. We got 2 shootings that we need to cover. Okay, one is the L'Oreal Tsanjani. Now I was able to say your last name earlier.
I know.
Tsanjani shooting in Winslow, Arizona. And this is a shooting by a Navajo Nation member, by a police officer, and a lot of people had a problem with the shooting because they felt that he did not need to shoot that woman, and we're going to show the video.
Did he kill her?
Killed her dead.
Oh.
Shot her 5 times. She's dead as Julius Caesar. So
That is Freddie Gray.
Wow, I was going to say that. If I had said it, I'm a racist. She says it, she's a hero.
All right, here we go. Oh, there's no sound at first. It's okay. There's no sound at first.
Are you watching it?
Yeah.
Can I see?
It's got a little bit of delay, but it's basically him going up to.
Was it a traffic stop?
No, she's a shoplifter.
A shoplifter?
Yeah. Okay. So she was a shoplifter, and what happened was he got a call describing a shoplifting suspect. He goes to stop her, and she is non-compliant. He reaches out to grab her, and they end up fighting or end up wrestling. He takes her to the ground. Now
he pushed her away.
Well, he took her to the ground, though.
Right.
And then she gets back up. Now, part of the issue with that is that once you take somebody to the ground, that's kind of where they're supposed to stay. And it was a mistake for him to not have stayed on top of her, because then when she got up, you see her with an object in her hand, and she's coming at him with the object pulled back.
What is it?
It turns out to be a pair of scissors. Okay.
It wasn't just like a little, let me clip my mustache. They were long.
Yeah, you could see them in the video.
You could see it when she was holding
it. So she's coming at him with a pair of scissors. There's another officer coming up behind her at an angle. It looks like he's coming up to maybe grab her. Mm-hmm. Well, the first officer is Officer Shipley is his name. Officer Shipley is backpedaling. He's got his pistol out. She doesn't care that he's got the pistol, and she continues to charge at him, and he shoots her 5 times and kills her. All right. Technically, that was assault with a deadly weapon on her part, and had she stabbed him, she would have gone down for assault with a deadly weapon, because scissors are a deadly weapon. Attempt murder. Wasn't
he wearing a vest?
That's besides the point.
Okay. Not on his neck and his face and the other parts where you could die. So, and even if he had a vest, you can stab through a vest. You can't shoot through a vest, but you can stab through a vest.
This is an important point, because there are many of my progressive friends who follow me who have that mindset over there.
Well, she doesn't know.
But I know that.
She doesn't know. So we're going to educate her now.
But wait a second. I know and you know that she doesn't know.
Right.
But they don't know that they don't know.
Well, we don't know. I mean, obviously we are not police officer. We did
Right.
not go through the academy, which
Right.
seems to be everyone's beef, right? You can't speak about police training. You can't speak about police reform because, well, you've never.
But you know it doesn't
you've
look
never
right
gone
to
through
you.
a police academy.
You know what strikes you
I
viscerally as
understand-
being wrong, though. You do know
I understand that, obviously charging at a police officer with any sort of weapon in their hand. I think a gun is more lethal than a pair of scissors. And I was going to ask you, aren't you taught hand-to-hand combat in? You guys don't scrap anymore. You don't throw down. I mean,
Yeah,
what
but you know
happened to
what?
the-
You're not taught that against somebody with edge weapon. You don't knuckle up against somebody with an edge weapon, and you don't take out your edge weapon. That was the appropriate
So I'm just curious.
response in that he shot somebody who was charged.
So
with
it
a
seems
knife.
like a justified shooting because
legally, yes, legally it was justified.
Right.
What was the dollar amount on the shoplifting?
Doesn't
I
matter.
don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At the point where she's coming at you with a scissors, she could have stole $1 million. She could have stole a pack of Tic Tacs. It doesn't matter because now it's about the danger you're in.
Right.
So here's the thing. Now, tactically, though, and this is where they may have to pay out some money in terms of wrongful death lawsuit or whatever. He's not in any legal trouble.
Right. He's not going to be.
Of course
He's
he's
not
not.
going to be
He's not
charged.
going to be. There's no crime.
No crime. It was caught on video and
No
everything.
crime at
No
this time. Nothing to see here.
Was
Move
he
along.
wearing was it his body cam?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was another officer approaching her from the. So now,
He didn't shoot the other
Cam from the car.
officer.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so now here's the thing. Tactically, I don't know that was the right thing to do when you had another officer coming into that field of fire like that. She
So
didn't,
can
she
I
didn't
just
even
stop
see
you
the
for
other
1
officer.
second? So the officer's coming from behind. His partner's coming
At an
from,
angle.
At an angle.
At
okay.
like
So
her
you're
at her
saying,
5 o'clock.
so for
basically.
him, he's coming
he's
not with his
going straight back. He's backpedaling in a straight line.
right, but the officer coming from the side is coming with his revolver drawn.
He's got no gun. The officer from the side has no
so
gun.
it's okay for him to approach her, and she's wielding.
Because
Well,
she ain't coming at him though.
That's going to be the defense.
Well, that's going to be the defense. But let me tell you also,
What's gonna be the
she
defense?
wasn't coming at him. So if she's moving away from me and moving toward Gil gonna feel threatened because she's coming at Gil with the scissors.
But
she don't even know I'm there.
you find it okay to, you can bring her down, and you're still a police officer with. You have your revolver, your service revolver is in your holster. You're going to come at her. You're going to go mano a mano with her.
Well,
it's okay for you to do that.
Well, we don't know what he was going to do.
Right. That's
we
what I'm
just know he
saying.
was a
Well, he
That's
certainly
where I'm
wasn't going to.
going.
He certainly wasn't going to come up behind her and start shooting her in the back.
But he appeared to have what we call a tactical advantage. He had a tactical advantage of her not knowing that he was even there. Okay? And he appeared to me to be coming in to maybe grab her arm or grab what. And I'm sure he saw the scissors because it was on the same side he was on. It was in her right hand. He was approaching from her right rear.
Right.
So he had a tactical advantage. Also, the level of threat is different. So the officer who's backpedaling with the gun out is the one she's coming at. Yeah, he's in more danger than the guy that she don't even know is there.
How come he just didn't taser her? I mean, I think that's the beef.
Okay, let's talk about
I think
that.
that's the beef that people have is
Right.
that
People
right
expect
away,
that, but let me tell you why. I'm
Okay.
going to break it down for you and give you some simple explanations.
George's going to break it down like a double-barrel shotgun. Okay?
There you go. Kaboom.
Okay, pumpkin?
Okay, with edge weapons, whether it's a knife or a sword or scissors, we have what we call a 21-foot rule. And that is that anyone who can get within 21 feet of you with that weapon can get on top of you and do some serious damage before you can deploy your gun, your taser, or whatever. Okay? Within the 21-foot rule, you are in danger. That's 7 yards. Guess how long the wires on a taser are?
6 feet.
They're 21 feet. So the taser is not for people with knives because if they're close enough for you to tase them, then you're within danger. Also, if we're talking about endangering somebody, even if the guy behind her hit her with the taser, we saw somebody tase a pregnant woman before who had a knife in her hand, and she ended up falling on the knife. Do you remember that? That was in the early days of the taser. She ended up falling on the knife. He came up behind her and tased her. She fell on the knife, and the knife punctured her stomach. The baby was unharmed. Miraculously, that was a long-ass knife, too. But it just the way it went, it didn't harm the baby. So we're taught that if somebody is standing in a body of water, they're standing at the top of stairs, they're standing in any precarious situation, the taser is not the way to go. So beside the 21-foot rule, so we have two reasons why you wouldn't necessarily use a taser in that situation. Okay? Now, in terms of I saw the eye roll.
Yeah,
for those of you who are listening on the
result.
podcast, for those of you who are listening on the podcast, she just rolled her eyes when I said that.
See,
For those of you who are
and
watching the
breathing.
video
Because what
but
you're
have the
doing is
sound
that-
turned down, she had asthma right now when I
and
said
breathing
that.
heavy. That's right.
Yeah, she had asthma, and she
That's
rolled her
right.
eyes.
I just feel like, okay, so then why even
Here's the problem.
Why have tasers? Why have
Because
why even
here's
be
why you
taught
have a taser.
to take people? You're taught to take people
But not
down
somebody with a
anyway.
knife. I'm taught to take somebody down who's going to knuckle up.
I just
That's who I'm taught to take
and
down.
not only that, the guy's coming from behind.
So that's where I'm going.
He should have allowed him to tackle him. He could have
I'm
then
going to
gone on
concur
her.
with you, but I'm going to concur with you from an informed perspective.
This is the problem.
But here's the problem.
So when you talk
but you don't understand why it's wrong. It just looks wrong to you. I'm going to tell you why it's wrong.
Okay.
All right? It's from a tactical standpoint, not legally, because legally he's completely justified to do what he did.
Sure.
It was his life on the line. He made the call. He's not going to go to prison. He ain't going to go to jail. He is, however, going to get sued, and he might even get fired. Okay?
Why would he get fired?
I'm going to tell you why. Was that a rhetorical question?
No, I'm just saying, why would he get fired?
All right, I'm
Freddie
answer the
Gray ends
question.
up dead.
Well, I'm going to tell you why he's going to get fired.
Curious why this guy's
because
gonna
he
get
used poor
fired.
tactics. Okay, he used poor tactics because number one, you had an officer coming into the line of fire.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number two, when he took her to the ground, he should have kept her on the ground, and then she couldn't have got up with the scissors. All right. Number three, you have a situation where this officer had possibly some other options only because the other officer was there. All right. Now, again, that's all him getting fired and getting sued. That's got nothing to do with him being criminally charged because he will not be criminally charged. Now, let's talk about her side of it. She did just steal something. That doesn't mean that she deserves to die, but it means that it was a lawful stop. Okay? She matched the description. He got it. He got the radio call, and the description must have been spot on because it was her. He's right. So he goes to stop her, and she is clearly non-compliant. He's a police officer in full uniform.
In a marked unit.
In a marked unit. She knows who he is, and she's not complying with him. She's fighting with him. He takes her to the ground. She continues to fight him. She gets up and charges at him. Turns out she had a history of mental illness and was off her meds, apparently. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's always a tough one because then people are like, damn, you almost feel like she's not in control of any of that, and it's a damn shame that because she was off her medication, she ended up putting herself in a situation that led to her death. Now, here's where the negligent retention side comes in. Beside that officer's tactics, and they may try to bring up his training, apparently, and we always do this, we bring up people's background, so I guess they figure, hey, if we're going to bring her background up with mental illness, let's bring his background up too. Apparently, he'd been written up before for cutting corners, for being less than truthful on reports, and I don't know why they kept him, for not following directions.
The union.
Okay, so maybe. But I don't know why that stuff wasn't caught when he was on probation, but maybe he hid it. People do that, right? They play the game while they're on probation,
right.
And then when they get off, then they shoot.
Yeah, because once you get off probation, you're
got a job.
Developing your own style.
So what happened was, they have all this paperwork on him, but they hadn't fired him, and he was still out in the street. This is called negligent retention, and when it comes down to her family suing the city of Winslow, Arizona, we're gonna see some money come out of it. I guarantee you. So that's what happened with there. So that happened. I sent Gil some info on it, and then the other thing happened. This the Corinne Gaines shooting, which involves a sovereign citizen movement, and that's the one that. And I'm seeing people on social media, really people who are not at all defenders of the police, are saying, "Yeah, but damn, what does she expect?" Mm-hmm. And there's some people who don't want to hear it because they're tired of people being killed by the police, and they're not looking at. They just don't want to hear it anymore. And the police are saying it happened this way. But nobody wants to hear what the police have to say because we've seen instances where that just wasn't the truth, like we just saw in North Miami 2 weeks ago, where they told some story that was highly implausible. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing a lot of pushback on that. Let's give you a little background. So apparently, Ms. Gaines was a adherent to the sovereign citizen movement, and I know,
but a very specific brand of a group because they're
must be because demographically she doesn't fit the profile.
Right. That's right, because most sovereign citizens are poor and white,
and male, not always male.
I forget
but
what
poor,
they're called. They're it's something more like MOOR, like the old
like the old Spanish Moor, the Moors who invaded Spain and the Moors of Africa, etc. Okay, so now. I'm glad you bring that perspective because I did not know that. I just thought it was odd, and I told you that there's a female black who was a member of the sovereign citizen movement. That's something that those kind of cars just don't pass you every day.
Right.
So I was surprised to hear that, but apparently she had been stopped earlier, and this is on YouTube also. She had been stopped in March. She was driving a vehicle that had cardboard plates that she'd made herself, basically, because the sovereign citizens do not believe in the rule of law in terms of many things unless it comes directly from the Constitution, and then even some of those things.
Right.
So they don't believe in paying fees for licenses. They don't observe marriage licenses, et cetera, et cetera.
They don't recognize government structure, the apparatus.
Correct.
Okay.
And if they don't even recognize the country, they believe they're in their own country, and they're freemen. That's what they call them,
And freemen, there you go. So now, and we had the freeman thing happen in Michigan, I think it was a while ago, right? There was a freeman deal. So let's we can show that second video that says under sovereign citizen movement to give people a little background on that and to see. The only law enforcement authority they recognize is the actual county sheriff, and you have to be a sheriff or one of his deputies in order for them to submit themselves to your lawful authority. That's what they ask about. Where's your delegation of authority, et cetera, et cetera. So we can roll that intro video on the sovereign citizen movement.
In 2010, 2 police officers were shot and killed by sovereign citizens in Arkansas during a routine traffic stop. In most cases, sovereign citizens tend to be more of a nuisance than a deadly threat. They claim that U.S. law does not apply to them and refuse to pay traffic tickets and taxes. However, a 2014 survey of law enforcement officers found that sovereign citizens were the #1 threat in the U.S., more so than even Islamic extremists or neo-Nazis. So what exactly is a sovereign citizen? Well, the concept is a little difficult to explain, mainly because it doesn't really make any sense. Basically, sovereign citizens believe that through a series of loopholes in common law court decisions, selective readings of the Constitution, and obscure tax codes, that they do not have to follow U.S. law. They tend to argue that because they never agreed to the federal government's authority, they cannot be arrested or charged with a crime. It is difficult to summarize the reasons behind this belief because every sovereign citizen tends to have their own interpretation of common law. Sovereign citizens often renounce their U.S. citizenship, driver's license, marriage license, voter registration, birth certificate, and anything else they see as a contract with the federal government. In nearly all cases, their claims are dismissed as frivolous. Most sovereign citizen organizations charge memberships or sell DVDs promising to explain how to achieve sovereign status. The movement was originally started by a 1960s Christian white supremacist group called Posse Comitatus. One of their core beliefs is that the United States is controlled by a global Jewish conspiracy. In order to distance themselves from supporting this government while still continuing to live within the U.S., they developed the belief that they are not subject to federal laws. The group is most known for pioneering techniques known as paper terrorism. This includes filing frivolous lawsuits, fake reports of tax evasion on government officials, and similar false documents. This forces their victims to spend time and money responding to these illegitimate claims, which sometimes even leads to bankruptcy. One of the simplest arguments against sovereign citizens is that the Constitution, and by extension the federal government, has express authority over citizens of the United States. This is according to Article 6 of the Constitution, known as the Supremacy Clause. Those who renounce their citizenship must do it in a foreign country and in front of a U.S. diplomat or consular. They cannot simply declare themselves sovereign while continuing to live in the United States. As of 2010, the Southern Poverty Law Center estimated that there were about 100,000 hardcore sovereign citizens. Another 200,000 have attempted sovereign citizen arguments against things like traffic tickets and taxes. Although their beliefs are completely illegitimate and born out of anti-Semitic racism, they are a disruptive and growing force within the United States. Although the fear of Islamic extremists has reached an all-time high in the United States, attacks are actually almost non-existent. Check out this video about what terrorist threats America is actually facing.
Only about 9 American Muslims per year have taken part in terrorist plots in the U.S. In total, 20 incidents resulted in about...
All right, so that's kind of your primer on the sovereign citizen movement, and it's been around for a while. In 2010, it came to surface, but I knew about this back, I think in the 90s, they started teaching us about this, didn't they?
Well, we used to recognize them as hate groups and militias. That's what they called them in the 90s.
Right.
And there were these groups of mostly white men who didn't want to, they thought the government was intruding on them in ways that were in violation of the Constitution, and so we had incidents like Ruby Ridge and Waco, Texas,
right,
where they tried to stand the line against federal law enforcement. And those were the hate groups of the 90s. That's where I first heard about them, and that's where I first interviewed.
And Mark leading all the way up to Oklahoma City. From
the Southern Poverty Law Center. I actually interviewed him when I was at KPFK. But in 2010, there was 2 police officers in West Memphis PD who were killed in a traffic stop by sovereign citizens. And it was a man and his son, and they what they did was they confused the officer with a bunch of paperwork. And so you can see the officer kind of, trying to figure out what is this guy talking about. And while they were doing that, his partner walked up to the car. His teenage son pushed the door open, knocks the officer over. It comes out with an AK-47, pops the officer, and then turns on the other officer, and they kill him. And they get back in the car and they take off. Well, one of the police officers was the son of the chief of the West Memphis Police Department, who was on his way to a vacation home with his wife who just had surgery. He hears on the radio, "Hey, we got officers down," so he rolls. And he gets to the scene, and the officers try to keep him back, but
because it's his son, sure,
it's his son, and so he's retired from the West Memphis Police Department.
With a son on the job myself, man, I can't even imagine that. Jesus Christ!
And so now he goes around the country training police officers how to deal with these sovereign citizens, and all these distraction techniques. And I was telling Trisha in the car on the way over here that this is interesting to me because that's the first time I heard about it was in 2010 or 2011 at an FBI training that I went to on extremist groups. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of this, quote, sovereign citizen.
Really?
I've heard of the hate groups. I'd never heard it called, quote, sovereign citizen.
Huh.
And so, and so as I, over these last five, probably the last 5 years, this movement has evolved into another thing. So these mostly kind of poor white people who don't want to be subject to any of America's laws or fines.
They don't want to leave.
Or licenses. They don't want to go anywhere.
They don't want to leave.
But they're just saying, hey, I'm not subject to your
laws.
So
I'm not paying any taxes, but I want to sit here under your protection and so everything else, right.
In these sovereign citizen trainings, they learn to say things like, am I being detained?
Right.
I saw a video today where the guy said, I'm not entering into a contract with you, so I'm not answering any questions. and here's the danger of that. Is now we have not only these 100,000 hardcore, but there's about 200,000 other ones now that are kind of morphing into this.
And this is how we got the Moorish sector, or the more.
But I don't know. I don't know how they their date of inception. I don't know if they've morphed out of like the Black Panther movement. I don't know, but I know that it is a faction of sovereign citizens, and they're African American.
So they're more and more, they're seeing these videos on YouTube, and they're watching these people challenge law enforcement and get away with it. And the cops are letting them go. And I was telling Trista, I watched one today that had LAPD in it. And they stopped an African-American guy, and he's got his teenage kids in the back. And he starts with this nonsense, right? Only open the window this much. I'm not subject to your laws under this and that, and these obscure codes that they cite. So the officer is like, okay, I'm writing a ticket for 4000A.
Right.
The guy doesn't want to give me his license registration.
Because you got a cardboard license plate, so I stopped you.
So the officer does the prudent thing. He calls for Sarge.
Right, sure.
Sarge rolls up, and Sarge has a discussion with him. They run the car. There's no warrants. The guy's got no warrants. They get the RO name, and they run that. So the Sarge makes a decision on the scene. He walks back to the car, and he says, he tells the guy, we're not going to arrest you, and I'm not going to cite you for 12500, 4000A, impound the car.
All the other things, the whole laundry list that you're out of pocket on.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write a parking citation for expired registration on the vehicle. And the guy goes,
not on you because it's not on him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead and write the parking citation. I'm not a threat to nobody. I got no guns.
Right.
And that's what they did, and they let the guy drive away. But
see, in his mind, that whole spiel worked.
That's right.
Okay, but
you got
to think about that as a police officer, right?
And for the people watching, they go, "Oh, well, that's all you have to do."
And that's the problem. And see, here it's about the message you send to people. I'll give you an example. I had years ago, a young policeman. I had a girlfriend, and I told her I had stopped this girl, and the girl was in a convertible. And I remember when I pulled her over, she went to get her license and her registration, and she rolled over in the seat in a very alluring fashion, okay, and basically just pointed her whole backside at me completely unnecessarily to get the license to get her registration paperwork. Mm-hmm. And I was just going to give her a warning anyway. And I said, okay, ma'am, well, hey, slow it down or whatever. So I'm relaying this story to my girlfriend because I think it's funny that this woman went through all this and I wasn't going to give her a ticket anyway. And she goes, wait, so you didn't give her a ticket? I said, no. She said, so she thinks she got away with that then. All you did was reinforce her bad behavior.
Right.
And I didn't even think about that.
That's right.
Right? She was jealous anyway. But you know,
she was hating.
But she told me all you did was reinforce her bad behavior, and that's your fault. Blah 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 blah. She was mad about that. Like, are you kidding me? I thought it was just more crazy woman stuff. But she had a point. Especially if you look at it this way, that now you're sending a message that this is okay.
That's right.
And now the next officer is going to have to deal with that.
That's right. And there was another one that I watched where it was out of state, but they had a car with a cardboard license plate, and he had written the UCC code and some other obscure some Bill of Rights or whatever. So he's parked in traffic, and he's got binoculars, and somebody calls the police. They're
Sure.
Hey, there's this guy who's parked in the middle of the street and looking with binoculars. So they roll up, same thing. You know, this guy's out of the car. Actually, he's out of the car, and you could see his binoculars on the hood. So I asked him, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? He goes, I'm just bird watching. Oh, okay. Right here, you're bird watching.
In the middle of the street.
He goes, yeah, I like birds. Okay, well, let me see your driver's license, registration, and you're in the traffic. Well, I don't know, there's no plate on your car. So they go through the whole thing. And the exact same thing happens. A sergeant rolls up. And here's what's happening. The police departments are now saying, do we want this to escalate the way that it should to 148 to
148 to resisting or delaying a peace officer. In
right. So, do we want it to take its normal course, which is what a cop wants to do?
Right.
Because I have a valid reason for stopping you. And here's where the cops here's where they get messed up. When people start talking like this or presenting this crazy paperwork, it throws them off. So they're like, well, wait a second. Am I doing something wrong?
Right, and that's because you're not sure of
themselves.
Right.
So when somebody says, if you stop somebody and I walk up to the car and they say, I don't adhere to any, well, whether you do or don't, I'm your driver's license. The reason I stopped you is whatever. Okay, and he said, am I being detained? The officers are so afraid to say, yes, you are. If I get behind you and I turn my lights on,
you are detained.
You're detained, god dang it, and you better pull over.
It is.
And when I get to the car, you better cooperate because if you don't, you're going to jail.
Comply.
And to have
order the corridor.
To have police.
No, it's
to have police
comply now. Complain later.
Or end up in the coroner's office.
Well, you know what? It has escalated to that point, and a lot of times that starts with noncompliance.
And if you watch that,
and I'm not saying you deserve a ride to the coroner because you didn't comply, but that's how it gets started a lot of times.
I mean, I'm not a defender of sovereign citizens.
You
but
watched the Corinne Gaines video, right?
Well, we're getting ready to run it right now.
Oh, okay.
It's 20 minutes long.
No, we're not that one.
Oh,
we ain't got that much time. All right. So now Miss Corinne Gaines.
But you can't. I think you're conflating things. Corinne Gaines she was a sovereign. She considered herself to be a sovereign citizen, and she followed that ideology. That is not the same as these other officer-involved shootings.
She was a sovereign citizen and a black activist.
Let's say that. Yeah, exactly. It was not the same because it was a little different.
But you could consider her affiliation with her branch of sovereign citizenship. You could consider that her activism, but that's I think it's wrong if you're trying. I think it's a slippery slope here, and I think that you can't conflate the two things. Not all black activists, not all activists engage in that sovereign citizen ideology.
That's right.
But hold on. You say black activists, you mean she was in, because there's black people in Greenpeace, but that don't make them black activists. That just means that they're activists for the Rainbow Warrior and everything else, and they happen to be black. Now, you mean she was an activist who happens to be black, or she had black issues on her in her activism?
She's a black activist, and she says to her kid, who's out there? The police. What do they want to do? Kill me? That's right. And if they try to come in
first traffic stop.
That's right.
Yeah, you can look that up on YouTube.
If they want to come in this car, you better fight. She's anti-law enforcement.
But hold on a second. But does that have to do with her being Black Lives Matter, Black Panther, or is that just about her being a sovereign citizen?
It's both. It is.
I don't know.
It's a confluence of both, because she also the Black Lives Matter, and I just read you what they want to do. You know, the end of militarization, end to public jails.
But that doesn't mean that they don't think the police should be able to stop you.
They're calling for defunding of law enforcement. They don't want police officers to be able to do traffic stops anymore. They want you to just mail it.
Oh yeah, somebody said that too.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What?
Oh, you know what? And I'm going to shout him out.
I don't want a ticket anyway. So
shout out to my man RT Steckel, comedian extraordinaire. I'm going to try to get him on the show. But RT and I got into this on social media about 2 weeks ago. You may have gotten in that conversation with Chief Bernard Wilson, where he was saying that the police should have unarmed people to enforce traffic laws. That was RT.
Right.
Okay. So RT, you were wrong then. You're wrong now. But I'd love to have you on the show. You can call in at 323-293-3375.
Before we go to our video, if you saw what the UK posted, Metropolitan Police over there posted yesterday, I believe it was, and it's on my Facebook page. They are now in the process of arming 2,000 officers.
Yeah, as they should have done a long time ago.
Because they're realizing that this namby-pamby, leftist, progressive, well, let's have a discussion about everything. And
well, it's just that their crime threat has evolved.
That's right.
That's what it is.
You cannot fight armed criminals or armed terrorists with talk and tasers.
With a baton and a British accent.
That's right.
So listen, we're going to run the Corinne Gaines video, and they're going to talk about that, talk a little bit about what happened. And there are some people who were saying that she exhibited bad parenting, really, and put her son in danger. And there are people who said the police had no business coming to her house in the first place. So let's play that.
Police shot and killed a woman after a long standoff at an apartment in Randallstown. A 5-year-old boy was shot during the barricade, but he's going to be okay. It all started after 9 this morning on Sulky Court. Police say 3 officers went to the apartment to serve arrest warrants on Corinne Gaines and a man who lived in the apartment. Gaines was wanted for failing to appear on several charges, including disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. She was charged after a traffic stop back in March. Police say the officers knocked. Nobody answered the door. Tactical was called in, and police say officers tried to negotiate with Gaines.
Corinne Gaines pointed, again, the shotgun, the long gun, at our personnel, advised them that if they did not retreat or leave, she was going to kill them. Perceiving not only her actions, but the words she used, we discharged 1 round at her. In turn, she fired several rounds back at us. We fired again at her, striking and killing her.
It's still not clear if police or Gaines shot the 5-year-old. Police say the man inside the apartment ran out with a 1-year-old. He was taken into custody.
So to me, you can adhere to whatever ideology you want to adhere to. You can stand on it like a rock. But when the police show up at your door and they've got guns, if you want to survive that encounter, the last thing you do is grab a gun yourself, especially when your child is in the house. And one account said that she held the child up as a shield, as if she thought maybe the police wouldn't shoot as long as she had her son up as a shield. And she was wrong.
Well,
so,
you have to. Well, number one, the video of the traffic stop is on my Facebook page.
So it shows you some context.
If you want to see, you have to have it in context. You have to understand her mindset. And then the other video of the police officers at her door, it's online also, up until it ends just before the shooting. But she's sitting. You can see the officer in his gear at the door. The door's open, and you can see him, and he's talking to her, and she's sitting on the table, and she's loading rounds into the shotgun. It's a sawed-off shotgun, and the kid is sitting right there.
Wow. Okay.
This was suicide by cop, but the ideology, and that's what's important about the other video of the traffic stop. That's why you have to watch that. So you think it
was intentional suicide, or it just you behave like that? That's probably going to happen.
It was. I think it was intentional.
And in the video of the traffic stop, she said they're going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "You're going to kill.
You have to murder me."
That's right.
You're going to kill me today. Yeah, she was,
right.
And she was telling her son, and she was, really calm. She was very calm with her kid. I mean, because obviously the 5-year-old didn't know what was happening, but he knew what was bad, and so he starts crying. It's a difficult video to watch because it is sad. But she is able to calm him down, and she said, if they try to take you away from me, you fight them. And he says, yes. Yes, he knows.
And so you were
him the camera to video.
Yeah, one time
she's ready to go hands on with him.
That's because I don't think, a lot of people who spout this, we used to have an issue in Watts with communists that would come in.
Right.
And they spouse that ideology, the Communist Youth Workers Party, and they were all tough asses, and they wanted to put their hands on you, or they wanted to knuckle up, like they wanted to put their hands on, till they got hands put on them.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them, when that happened, they realized that, damn, I'm in the real school now. This is an ideology and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't no theories involved. This
right.
theory of gravity, that's what's involved, right? And after they got bounced off the sidewalk a couple of times, then they kind of chilled out on that. And you would think that if you are accepting that these are real police officers with guns, this ain't Call of Duty, this is real life with real people, with real guns, with real bullets, and real blood is going to come out the side of your face if you get shot, and you're really going to die. I think your behavior is a little bit different unless you have some mental health issues.
Right.
And some people have said that too, that it was clear to them based on her behavior that there may have been some mental health issues there. I'm not.
It may be mental health, but I'll tell you this: the thing that struck me about it is this is the new America. This is Obama's America.
I knew you were going to try to bring Barack Obama in somehow. Hold on. Let me the sovereign citizen movement has been around before Barack Obama. When he was going to school in Columbia or something. But I don't, I'm just trying to make sure, man, because, you try to rope Obama and everything. I heard he killed Kennedy and Lincoln, too.
He was the third shooter on the
grassy knoll. Exactly. All right. There you go. All the way from Kenya.
In the new America that Trish wants to live in, this anti-police rhetoric that comes from the White House and has fueled the attacks on officers that we've seen, especially this year, and they're going up because of a false narrative about cops killing blacks when they are killed.
But it's not false, though.
Wait a second.
It's not false?
The narrative that the greatest danger to a young black man is a police officer?
Oh, that's false.
That is false.
That's false.
That's right. So, but they've bought into it.
He said that the greatest danger to African-American males is police officers. Uh-huh. He said that.
Yeah.
The president said that?
Yeah. That's what he said.
When did he say that?
You want me the date? I don't know.
We'll have to Google that.
You know what?
We're going to fact check that for next time.
I'll post all the videos of this.
This will be part of the recap next week. I tell you what, if you're watching this, see if you can find it. If you can find it, post the link on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page.
It begins,
and we'll see if anybody can find it.
It begins with the Cambridge Police Department acted stupidly, and it's gone on from there.
But he didn't say that the greatest danger facing an African American male today is the police.
Well, no, because he thinks the greatest danger facing anybody is refrigerators.
But he didn't really. So now let's just drill down. He didn't. I'm giving you a chance now. It's the last chance. Now to walk away from this one. Did the President of the United States of America, Barack Hussein Obama, say that?
We can play semantics if you want.
But he didn't say that.
All I'm saying is that the anti-police rhetoric, which begins in the White House and is espoused by this president, that is the beginning. And you have more and more uninformed people with mental health issues, and they start to believe this nonsense. And because they believe it,
they're not going on their own experience?
They act. Is that what Corinne Gaines was doing?
I'm asking you, is that going on their own experience?
But we're not trying to give her any kind of credibility. We're not trying to make an argument for
Neither am I.
Sovereign citizens.
I'm trying to speak to the mindset.
I'm trying to say that no, but this is what I won't allow you to do, and I won't allow you to say that.
You won't allow me?
Right.
Not without checking you.
No, I'm just not going to. You cannot make a blanket statement. Sovereign citizens have been around for like the last 15 years, right? Exactly. He's only been for 8. And the other thing is that
I'm not talking about. He didn't start the sovereign citizen movement for God's sake.
And they've been anti-police since before that.
Exactly.
They were anti-government.
Right.
But unfortunately, law enforcement they have to share the reputation the current reputation that it has.
Even if it's a false narrative, he just said it.
Oh no, hold on a second now.
Well, first of all, I'm not even willing to say it's a false narrative.
If anybody said that the greatest threat to a young African American male is a police officer, that is clearly and patently false.
That's what the Black Lives Matter people believe.
Well, that's false. However, what I will say is this, and I said this earlier.
Well, let me ask.
Let me reiterate what I said online earlier. That black people being murdered are being murdered by mostly by other black people, by black criminals. Okay, black dentists ain't doing drive-bys. It's Crips and Bloods,
right?
Okay, and whatever else you want to call that,
gangs, narcotics,
the vice lords or whoever else they got, Blackstone Rangers, they still got them, right? So they're killing people. They are criminals, though. It is not shocking to us when a criminal engages in criminal behavior. It is shocking to us when police officers engage in criminal behavior, and that's why people are up in arms when a black person is murdered by a police officer who then tries to lie and plant a taser on the man and cover it all up. And then people say, well, damn, we see it happen now, but people have been saying it's been going on for years. Keep in mind, your average American middle-class white person did not believe that police did the kind of things they did until they saw the Rodney King video. That was a wake-up call for white America because they could finally see what black America had been talking about for years. So now we see this video of Walter Scott being murdered in cold blood, gunned down by a South Carolina police officer. And the officer casually goes over, tosses a taser. He doesn't know he's on video, so he makes up this whole story. And that officer, like I said before, if they're not for the existence of that cell phone video, that officer would be working right now. he'd be out free on the streets having murdered somebody. So people look at that as the tip of the iceberg and say, what else has been happening all this time? And it calls into question everything we've done. And that's why I agree with you, Trish, when you say that we in law enforcement have to take our share of that. I've been saying that since we started this show. People don't like us because of shit we've done. And we need to take ownership of that, and we need to try to do something to change that.
Also,
people ain't lying.
Also,
ain't
if
lying.
you
Wait a second. Let me just respond to that. People don't like us because they don't like to go to jail. That's why.
Well, there's people who don't have a criminal record, who've never been arrested, who have a problem with the police nowadays.
Okay, but that's based on a false narrative. That's my whole point.
So Walter Scott wasn't really murdered.
If
of
you
course
look
he
at,
was.
What about the other man in South Carolina who was reaching for his ID in the car like the trooper told him to, and the trooper shot him?
Yeah. What about it?
Okay, that happened too.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm saying is
those are outliers.
They are
Those
outliers,
are
but
the
they're
exception.
documented. They're
those
documented.
Are the exception and not the rule.
Okay,
and you know that.
And I will agree with you 100%. They're the
Thank
exception,
you.
not the rule, but they happen.
Thank you. Of course
and
they do.
And the fact that they happen in the same state less than a year apart, and they both got captured on videos, got everybody wondering, what are we seeing what are we not seeing? What didn't get captured? If those two things got captured, damn. Just like if you get somebody who comes in here, we run a background, he wants to be a cop, and we run a background investigation on him, we find he's been arrested twice for soliciting prostitutes.
Boom.
Did he just do it twice? He's been arrested twice. He ain't just do it twice. That's his lifestyle. He just got cracked for it twice. He's just a trick. Right? He just got caught twice. That's what that means. So my point is, when we have two unlawful shootings that are caught on video, it makes you wonder, well, damn, what else has been going on pre-video? What's going on now that's not caught on video? Mm-hmm. We've done some stuff as American law enforcement that our chickens are coming home to roost right now.
Exactly.
And we continue to do things, and we have to take ownership of that.
That's bullshit.
We can't act like police officers never do anything wrong.
And not only that, after
what would Pop say?
After I have
that's
no idea.
I'll tell you what he say. That's bullshit.
Are you allowed to swear on the radio?
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. This ain't terrestrial radio.
So after Rodney King, there was a book that came out. It was called "The Rage of the Privileged Class," and it looked at the experience of affluent African Americans, and that there was a study done at UCLA where they found that actually affluent African Americans identified more strongly with Rodney King because they, a
parolee.
Let her finish.
Right,
let her finish.
And
I'm asking a parolee.
These were people who had done everything right. Right, they went to school, they went to college, they are professionals.
Good credit. All the whole 9 yards.
However, those things that they did not preclude them from being unlawfully pulled over. I have during the 90s, I had a friend who was a African American trauma surgeon, and he told me about one time he was out to dinner with a group of physicians and surgeons in Pasadena, and actually Pasadena PD pulled him out of a restaurant saying that he matched a description of and it was complete BS.
And it wasn't true? How does he know?
It was not true.
But we know good and damn well that they don't go pulling white doctors out of restaurants.
So Pasadena PD is driving down the street.
No, I don't know. I can't remember now because literally this happened like in 1995. But I'm just saying that the problem isn't so much. It would be one thing. It's worse. It's not just something that you want to say that your argument is that people who are supposed to be pulled over get pulled over,
That's
and what
sometimes it's people
but what
who
progressives
out of place.
Say, people like me, people like George say that actually, and if you listen to people in these communities, they're saying actually we're being pulled over, we're being stopped for unknown, not unclear reasons and things like that. You can't just stop and see. You cannot create,
called a fishing expedition.
You can't just do that. You can't just just to see, and maybe you're going to catch something that way.
Can I just respond very quickly?
Please do. We don't have much time.
I'm going to respond quickly and quietly.
I'm sure.
It'll be neither.
First of all, it's mostly criminals and activists and the families of criminals who are making all the noise. And I'm going to tell you this from having worked in South Central. The people that actually have to live there with these criminals and these gang members and these dope dealers and these dope users that have to live around them every day, they were happy to see us. And they wish we would spend more time there. And every time we got into it and put somebody in jail, they quietly applauded from behind the doors because somebody was there trying to help
100% agree because I was there and I saw that. But those same people also wonder why you pulling me over when there's other criminals and dope dealers and gangbangers and rapists for you to be messing with. why am I getting stopped? I'm just on my way home from Kaiser.
And
I work
the
at
other
Fedco,
thing
for
too
God's
is that when
sake,
you look
know.
at how much it
Well,
costs,
if you don't do anything to, I drive every day. I've driven my whole life, man.
I haven't been pulled over in a while.
I have never been.
But I've been pulled over for bullshit
because
before.
I'm Hispanic.
I've been pulled over for bullshit before.
I haven't.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like
and neither have you in wherever in your little enclave.
Well, apparently, I'm not a threat. According, I was told recently,
neither
I'm not
am
a threat.
Neither am I.
I'm not. Allegedly, I'm not either. But sometimes, all right.
But that's what somebody told me.
The producer scratched on the note, so we're going to start rapping. But go ahead. Go ahead, Trish.
Oh well, I forget what I was going to say now.
Oh,
wow, Gil derailed your train of thought.
Derailed.
Okay, so listen, we're going to do this, and we need to get that video up for that traffic stop back in March.
You need to find the
right?
transcript of President Obama saying that the greatest threat to African Americans.
Right,
is,
and you'll find that right next to the treasure map to Davy Jones' locker.
Exactly.
And OJ's alibi and et cetera, all the other stuff that ain't out there.
Yeah, we give tips. You used to give safety tips. I want to give a safety tip to police officers who have to deal with sovereign citizens. Number one, if they start pulling out paperwork, it's all bullshit. Don't even listen. Don't entertain it. If they don't open your window, if they don't want to open the window, don't want to recognize your authority, take them to jail. That's it. And if the call for the supervisor and they're the ones who decide, let's just let this go. Okay, fine. You're just making it tougher for the next cop.
But in this political climate, they're going to do that. They're going to call for a supervisor.
In this politically correct, progressive.
There's nothing wrong with prudence. And
but you can't get punked, because if you get punked, it makes you less effective on the streets, and then it elevates to the point or escalates to the point
also,
where
I think
people
you need
do
to,
this kind of shit.
But I think we need to also look at like the fee. One of the things that I subscribe to on social media, look at how much these court fees cost people and stuff like that. So I think that simply
they're a deterrent.
Simply
for God's
hauling
sakes.
people off to jail breaks up families, and there's a real economic impact on families.
Yeah, okay, and I don't disagree with that, but. Typically,
he doesn't disagree with it, but he disagrees with it.
No, but I don't disagree with that. But here's my thing: if I pull you over, and whether you recognize my authority or not,
but
it's
again,
the case. You may not recognize the law of gravity.
You guys
want to
conflate things, and it's not. Sovereign citizens are a totally different thing.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what we're talking about. That's
a terrorist organization. I'm talking about the average person who.
Average person, roll your window down.
That's right.
Average person, roll your window down.
That's right.
All.
People all over are rolling their. What I'm suggesting
Officer,
is
why did you stop me? Oh, you didn't stop. Completely.
It's that simple.
Stop. See your registration, license, and proof of insurance. Thank you very much.
All right. So on that note, we're going to wrap, and I want to thank our very special guest, Trish, for showing up.
We got to have you back, because this is
definitely
good.
We got to get you back with the prisoner pipeline thing, and we got David Cruz in here.
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk prisoner pipeline,
but
then I got some video of.
Yeah. No, we're going to get to that though. We are. We got to have you back, and I'm sure you'll be a listener favorite or a viewer favorite too. So, because you went in on Gil, it wasn't just me today, so that was good. And she got a lot of practice going in on Gil.
That's right.
Like her whole life. Holidays, so
her whole life. So there you go.
And she never wins. Interestingly.
Oh please.
Well, she scored some points today. So listen, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. You can send us an email to rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram.
Hit my social media. What you thought of the show tonight. If you like Trish, if you want to see Trish back, let me know.
Yeah, hit us up, and we'll have her back. All right, we'll see you guys next week, and be safe.
That's right.